Right, okay.
Good morning. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It is Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025. It's 10:30 in the morning, and we have folks from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development to come talk to us about federal funds in their worlds. And so first we have Commissioner Goldstein from the Department of Economic Development, and then we'll have Heather Pellon, Commissioner of Department of Tourism and Marketing. And so, Joan, we're going to make sure we make the best use of you for your last days at HCD before you head over to VITA.
Excellent. So, good morning, everybody.
Too. So welcome. You guys want to introduce yourselves and take it away.
Sure. Joan Goldstein, Commissioner of Economic Development until Friday.
And Brett, you want to?
Sure. I'm Brett Long. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Economic Development.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. I think that there's a printout, a PDF of our federal funds, the programs that are impacted by federal funds. So I think if you have that handy, the first two, I believe, are the tourism funds. So I'll start with the procurement technical assistance for business firms. It's called APEX. This is a federal, it's 65% federally funded. It's a program where we have in total seven persons that are situated in Montpelier and around the state. Counselors that help businesses procure government contracts and grants. And that's whether that's federal government, state contracts, local contracts. It's really about how to help small businesses through this process, since it's a pretty involved process. That program is funded through Department of Defense. And you'll see on the spreadsheet, the amount budgeted is $650. I believe that's the federal portion, if I have that right. I don't know if Dan Dickerson's on the phone with us, but
he's here. He's here.
That's correct.
That's okay. Thank you, Dan.
Am I reading that right? Okay. And so that's mainly, that's all operating. That's not granted out to anybody. That's operating money for us to operate this.
Okay, and that says that it expired 3/31 of 25.
No, so yeah, so every year it gets renewed. The thing is, we're waiting to find out what's happened. We haven't heard anything negative, but usually it's a process.
Okay, is this the thing that I used to know as PTAC?
Correct. That is correct. It was known as PTAC, which was the acronym for Procurement Technical Assistance Center. And it's now called APEX because it's meant to, which stands for accelerator. And it really is like an accelerator for small businesses, because sometimes their government contract is the thing that keeps them in business, starts them in business, and makes them sustainable.
Okay.
Should I just continue then? And
whatever the next one is, sure.
The next one is also Department of Defense, and I'll let Brett speak to that since he's been key on this. It's also grant money that we share with New England states.
Yeah, so we've received a series of awards from, it's another office of the Department of Defense, the Local Community Defense Cooperation Group. And this current phase, well, with these grants, we provide assistance to, generally it's small businesses that are in the defense supply chain. And in this case, it happens that in the last few awards, Vermont is actually the fiscal agent for a collaboration that includes all 6 New England states. We have offered a range of tasks, including cybersecurity awareness programs. And right now, we're doing a workforce development program where we're trying to ensure that local community colleges are offering the programs that are important to manufacturers. And we're about to kick off a pilot program where we'll introduce local small businesses to the opportunity to introduce new, what are called Industry 4.0 technologies, things like robotics, additive manufacturing, Internet of Things, et cetera.
So is this the economic adjustment and assistance for state governments?
That's right.
Okay. Okay, and so you pass some money through to sub-recipients who are the other states or other?
No, they're our partner organizations. So people like VMEC and other
Okay.
partner organizations.
Okay,
So we pay it out in contracts to people who are going to do cybersecurity training,
Right.
cybersecurity awareness. A lot of government contractors need to get a certain level of compliance. It's very complex. These smaller businesses can't do that on their own, but they have a lot at risk if they're not compliant.
Mhm. Okay. And that's $1 million?
That is the million,
Yeah.
yeah, a little over $1 million. If there are no questions, I'll just continue.
Continue.
The next 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe you heard from DHCD. Those are all housing community development. The next one that pertains to DED is state trade expansion. That's from Small Business Administration. And that is every year we get grant money. It's about, usually varies from like 250 to 300. And these are small grants that are very, very helpful for they have to be a small business that wants to export their goods and how to learn how to do that. And everything from training, where there's a training course offered through VMEC, there are customs brokers, there are consultants about how to navigate getting into other markets. It's very complex. This money has always been used every single year. We also pay for attendance at international trade shows. So if they want to expand into their markets, typically they go to industry trade shows, very expensive for a small business. It also helps with things like translation of materials, marketing materials, website translations. So all that money is sub-granted out to businesses.
And I'm wondering what you're finding on that, because we keep reading about, Canadians are not purchasing Vermont products in particular. I can imagine the same thing is happening overseas. I mean, what are you hearing on that front? We've got the articles that we've read about Bar Hill and Skeeta and other places, but what are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard that. We've also heard the opposite, which is some of the small businesses who are importing materials and goods are concerned because in many cases it is some of the Asian markets, including China. So yeah, we've heard the larger stories about shipments being blocked, but really we've heard more on the other side, more concern about the imports.
Okay.
The next is the brownfield assessment and cleanup. We've had a few federal awards that are basically being spent down. However, we did apply for additional funding. And this is a combination of loan and grants. And this is the activity that we had. It was the only thing we had depended upon before the state was able to fund us on the state side. It was, much more flexible funding. So these loans go to private developers, nonprofits, and municipalities. Very much in demand, as you know, just because of the sheer number of contaminated properties. So typically those are spent down.
Is that from the EPA?
Yeah, sorry, that's Environmental Protection Agency. And so far, again, we don't hear of, in fact, they had another round that we applied for. We should hear in May. We've not heard anything contrary. So full steam ahead on that.
And how much did you apply for this next one that you're going to hear in May?
Brett, was it 2 mil? Was it 2
No, we
million?
actually applied for 4 million.
We applied for 4. We're not sure. We've never applied for that much before, but again, since we're unsure of things, we went for I think that was the maximum.
Yeah.
So yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, we have a very good track record in terms of utilizing the funds. a good track record in terms of cleanup. So I think in the New England region, we're one of the leaders.
Yeah. Jim has a question.
So Joan, maybe you could just clarify, so you've got on your spreadsheet, 2.6 million budgeted in fiscal year 26. Are we talking about the same potential grant, or is this something different?
Yeah, actually, Dan, I wonder if you could clarify for me, because I know that there are a couple of very large projects in the mix that are just about to close, and I'm just not sure whether our budget included that residual, which is now on its way to being obligated, or whether included the additional money we applied for. The application just went in, so chances are it doesn't include that.
Okay.
Yeah, because we really didn't know about that round at the time of putting together the budget.
Yeah, that's correct. Dan Dickerson with the Agency of Commerce Community Development. So the budget that you see, the 2.6 million does not reflect the 4 million that they just applied for. So that would go through the maybe either go through the JFC review process, or we would get an excess receipt to spend those. And then it's more, the 2.6 is more reflective of a combination of the two active grant awards that we do have and what we estimate we would get out for 6 for obligated.
Is this a do the work and then bill back, or do you have this money in hand?
We would not have.
Yeah, we usually have to draw this. This is not, they don't just give us a deposit. We have to draw it down.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
After expenditures have occurred, we would
Get the reimbursement.
yeah, we'd ask for reimbursement.
Thank you.
Sorry. Any other questions on that? The Northern Border Regional Commission is a commission of all the, so I guess it's New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And for years we don't get appropriations from them. We get, grant money that we utilize. We meaning department prioritizes the applications and recommends to the governor, who should get funded. And then all the states kind of vote on this, right? That money that we vote on, that grant money, that does not hit our budget at the state. What hits our budget at the state is the capacity money. So you'll see in the column 632,000. And what happens is each year they're giving us capacity money. That capacity money funds one position at DED to do that work of prioritizing, soliciting the applications, et cetera. It also funds another position at Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation to do the outdoor recreational grant programs and activities. The additional money is for the RDC network, and the RDCs have been prioritizing projects. We call this the regional priority project list, so that when we do these solicitations, we understand what are the key projects in each of the regions. And so they get some of that money to do that administration through working with the RPC and working with an outreach process to make sure that we know, that the state knows what the projects are that deserve funding. We utilize that as a preference in our selection.
Questions about that? We just heard from the RPCs too, so. Great. Yeah. So, so you haven't had anything specifically paused at this point? Or temporarily, whatever, nothing like that at this point?
No, so far so good. Everything is as scheduled.
Okay. Well, that's good news.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
So you're basically continuing business as usual.
Correct. That is
Yeah.
correct.
Joan, seeing how you're switching roles in a couple of days, does VITA have any federal funding behind it?
I think there are a few programs that are federally funding, like USDA intermediary lending program, and there's two others, which his names I can't remember right now, but yeah.
And are there any concerns being raised in those areas for those grants?
I think there's a few delays, but yeah, just a delay in processing.
Any other questions for Joan and Brett? All right, pretty clear cut for you guys. That's great. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate it, and for your work, Joan.
Thanks.
We've worked together in a lot of capacities. It sounds like we'll still be seeing you around. So
That's right. That's right.
enjoy a little break, and congratulations. Enjoy your new work job. So
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been
All
a
right.
pleasure.
You're welcome.
all right, take care, you guys. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And so Heather, come join it. Is Dan joining you, or is he just commenting from the sidelines? You are welcome to do whatever you'd like. Okay.
I'll wait and phone a friend if I need to.
Okay. I think we have something from you on our. Do we have something? Oh, yes, I guess it's the same spreadsheet, isn't it?
Same spreadsheet.
So if you want to introduce yourself for the record and talk to us about your piece.
Sure. For the record, Heather Pelham, I am the Commissioner of the Department of Tourism and Marketing. Yes, on the spreadsheet, it's line 2. This is another economic adjustment award. This comes from EDA. So the genesis of this award is a post-COVID recovery for tourism, travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation. Every state received a block grant that was relative to the proportion of losses suffered during the pandemic. What I would point out on this spreadsheet is it doesn't quite capture the total amount of funds that are at play, quote unquote, because the 1.1 in that one column is FY24, what we expended, and the 4 million is FY26, but it doesn't account for FY25. So my punchline is that there's about 7.25 million at play at the moment that we
In all 3 fiscal years.
going from now going forward. So for the total award that we received versus what we have actually been reimbursed for, we still have 7.25 outstanding. 1.25 of that is reimbursements that we have requested that we have not yet received. So we have not gotten a reimbursement request fulfilled since January.
And how long does it normally take?
Couple of weeks. So I would say in terms of what we have heard, and then I can talk more about, the balance, but it's a bit of a mixed message. We have not heard that the funds have been paused, but again, we have not received the reimbursements. And to the question earlier, this is a reimbursement award. We don't have the money in hand. We have been told so far, it's just delays, an extra layer of review. But I will say they have been asking some additional questions. So in terms of the money that is outstanding, some of that is for sub-awards that we made. This was through our T-term grant program, which was really to, this whole grant is to increase visitation to the state. And so we did do some sub-grants to individual organizations around the state. They have asked some questions about a few of them that include some buzzwords.
So what organizations, sub-grantees?
Catamount Arts
Yeah.
is one of them. Kelly Brush Foundation is another one, and the Southwestern Chamber of Commerce are the ones they've asked questions about. They've just asked, they have not come out and said anything inflammatory. It's more like, when is this going to be wrapped up? For the Kelly Brush Foundation, some of the work we're doing, they wanted to make sure that it was going to increase visitation to all visitors and not just those who might have a physical disability. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna formulate one in my head.
yeah,
I remember when this took effect a couple years ago.
yeah,
And they actually helped with our overall tourism marketing side of things because you were getting this federal money. What are you hearing? So this was every state that was eligible for this, I
Yeah.
believe. What are you hearing from your counterparts in other states? Are they getting reviews such as you just mentioned? Or is this really isolated because it's a couple of unique organizations that, without knowing anything else, might lead one to believe that they were more targeted?
Yeah, great question. From what I'm hearing from other states, it's similar. It hasn't been an we're stopping this grant. It has just been a delay. And I will say that when we put our grant administration plan together, so basically what we were going to spend the money on, there's a couple of big buckets. So there's a number of research projects and data that we've been able to gather. We're working on a strategic plan. We're working on a brand study. Some of those line items in our plan are relatively vague. I would maintain that's to our benefit at the moment. We are certainly fulfilling everything we said we would do. The sub-grants have more detail, and I think that may have been why there have been questions about them.
Just suppose, for example, that some of these grants that you've done are denied. What happens? Who's on the hook?
I would maintain that as a department, we have a responsibility to fulfill those grants. So then the department would be on the hook. We would feel an obligation to fulfill those grants through our operating funds. That would certainly have an impact on the rest of our budget. I wouldn't feel right pulling those funds necessarily.
But have they been spent?
So they're about halfway through, I would say. So
I'm hearing 1.25 million that you're waiting to be reimbursed for. And then I'm also hearing 7.25 million. So, I mean, what's the total amount you're waiting to be reimbursed for right now that
we're waiting to be reimbursed for 1.25, and there are 6 still to be spent. That's where the
6 million is still to be
spent.
And so if you were to spend them and not get reimbursed,
then
that's your risk.
That's the risk, exactly.
How big is your whole department budget?
4.5. Yes. Now so another complication, or not complication, but just another layer to that is, of the 6 that has not been spent, I would say it's about half and half of activities that the department is conducting. Like I said, the visitation research, our basic destination marketing, and about half is sub-grants. 2 million of that is a sub-grant to Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation. So should everything go pear-shaped, that would be a liability for that department as well.
So your reliability might only be 4 million if you spent the 6, and they'd be on the hook for 2 million.
Potentially.
For administrative.
Still the state.
Still the state.
So the state, but it's
Okay.
not more than 100% of their budget.
Correct.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
When does this grant finish up?
This ends in November. So
This November.
this November. So all of this work is in process, and to Commissioner Goldstein's point before, everything is full steam ahead. So this work has been contracted. It's the reason why we have that large a balance at the end is really just because we can't bill for it until the work is complete, because it is reimbursement.
So when will you bill for it? November?
So no, we bill monthly as we have invoices for the work, but to state procurement rules, we also can't pre-bill, for work that has not been completed yet. So even though we may have the work under contract, until the work has been completed, we can't bill. So these are,
Okay, if I was pessimistic about my chances of getting full reimbursement, is there any work you can hold off on?
potentially. I mean, there's some, but I would be,
Help you
Right.
if you hold off in November, because it's all done by then.
right, it would be,
But if you said now, it's not looking good, based on the initial reviews, I better cut back without risking more reimbursement. Can you do that?
potentially, but I'm in a catch-22, because we're at if there was more time on this grant, I might be more willing to say like, hey, let's slow down and see what happens. But if I don't spend it, I lose it, right? So I have to keep working towards that end until they tell me that we're not, I have nothing to say right now that we're not going to have that money. And because of the time it takes for these projects to go through, I can't wait until October and say that, oh, great, everything looks good, So that's the catch-22 that I'm in.
I understand. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to protect,
Yeah, understood.
our state money,
Yeah.
of doing, backfills that we had anticipated. And I want you to do whatever you can do.
Yeah.
To market Vermont. We're already facing challenges, with the border. So we'll do an even better job with, our market. So.
Yes, and I think that would be the struggle that we're in is that where would that money, so if we were to cut anything back, we would be cutting back in our marketing dollars. That is the most flexible. So, if we were to do that, if all signs pointed differently, that would be our only choice, because that is more on a rolling basis. So then not only are we not taking advantage of the federal funds, and we'd have to use general funds for anything, but then we're also not meeting the moment, which is we know that visitation is at risk right now. We know what we've seen about, what we're facing in terms of decline from Canadian visitation. It's very real. And, I can talk a little bit more about that if you'd like, but it's those sort of somewhat flexible funds where we would be sort of our only lever to potentially pull back on near the end. If that answers your question.
I think John did the question, and yes, we'll want to get into some
Okay.
Canadian stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe you are now, so go ahead.
Something for,
Okay, yeah.
so, I mean, what are a couple of key things you feel like you must do here, just given the border situation here? Business and upon being in business where their money.
Yes.
That's think about Berg here, but across the northern part of the state, and other places in the state as well. Are a couple of key things you're focusing on to increase that visitation?
Well, I would say
Given where we are.
yeah.
There's things you do year in and year out, we know that.
Right. So I would say that's the first thing. Number one, we're not, we're definitely not pulling out of the market. I mean, I think there was a point of time where it's like, we don't want to seem tone deaf in any way. We understand that people are upset. So we are continuing our marketing efforts, and we have been working to put together kind of a bit of a task force in terms of folks that are within the industry to think about different events that are going on this summer that we can all coordinate on, different kind of what I would call low cost tactics in terms of how we can make sure that Canadians understand and recognize we welcome them. Our brand values haven't changed. How can we sort of get that? What we're trying to thread the needle is how do we get the word out, how much we want to continue to welcome Canadians and not create a lightning rod situation for Vermont that might have any kind of negative pushback in terms of how forward we are in trying to distinguish ourselves from the rest of the United States.
You've already been targeted.
Well, we would like to not. We're trying to thread that needle.
Yeah.
Trying to thread that needle. So I would say this is also this is something that is not it's going to be an ongoing issue for us throughout the summer. So, we have definitely seen the statistics in terms of the reduction in border crossings. We just saw last week, I had held some hope that we were seeing a delta between the decline in border crossings nationally, which was about 23% in February, but in Vermont, it was only down 7%. But in March, Vermont border crossings by travelers and passenger vehicles are down 32%.
State, what was it nationally in March?
It was about the same. So that delta between national, we caught up, unfortunately. Yeah. I don't know if anyone saw the testimony that we heard in the joint hearing for Tourism Economy Day, but Steve Wright was here from JP and shared, that they're just as another sort of data point that pass sales for this coming year are up 10% somewhat domestically, are down 80% from Canada. So we are going to, double down, quote unquote, on our outreach to Canada, but it also, in any situation like this, we also have to think about other markets to make sure that we are backfilling to maintain, that's a $4 billion industry for us. So we have to do both.
So a couple more questions. One's a quick yes or no question. So I'll save that for last. But our local chambers, in the northern part of the state here, because we have a lot of
Yeah.
Canadians that come down, about 30% come down for a particular business, so we kind of expect that percentage coming down here, and that may be less a little bit. We don't know. I think we're going to kind of find out probably during like Memorial Day, Victoria Day, holiday kinds of things, what that might begin to kind of look like here, what kind of response we're going to get with visitors coming, who normally come every year in and year out. In our local chain, I'm part of the Burke Area Chamber of Commerce here. What can we do to help you with a little bit of marketing or messaging or things you want us to be hosting here?
So this is
That
what.
might be helpful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the offer. This is what the conversations that we're having is how can we best, so we have been fielding calls from, the folks in Newport, for example, from the folks in Burlington, there are to, talk to folks at Kingdom Trails along the LVRT, like there's lots of different organizations who are trying to figure out like, what is the best thing to do? So we are putting together a plan of what are the things that we can all do together, as well as what the department can do to kind of have this collective impact. So those conversations are ongoing. And I agree that Victoria Day, same about John Baptiste Day, right? Canada Day, like those are all coming up in about, 6 weeks from now. So I would say those are active conversations. We have a meeting tomorrow about it.
Burke Chamber is in college. This is my call.
Not yet, but I'm happy to make sure that everyone is included. We have the annual Vermont Tourism Summit next week on Tuesday, and this will be a big conversation for folks then. So
Where is that?
it's being held at Hotel Champlain in Burlington this year. It rotates around the state every year. So, these are active conversations that we're all having as to, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? How can we do this together to have that, like I said, collective impact is really what we're going for.
And we're kind of like anecdotally, like collecting information about what we're hearing, from potential visitors that say, we're not coming this year here, but our chamber wants to be a little more data-driven that way. So we kind of be a collecting point. We'd like to share that.
Yes, please do. And we are also, we understand how much hard data is important for everybody. Backward looking is always a little bit frustrating because there is this delay. We put out actually a request for proposals for some forward-looking Canadian data and some additional survey work that we got the bids back just on Monday. So we were going to be able to activate that. It's one of the kinds of contracts that we're using this EDA money for, so that we actually have, up as much both real-time sentiment information, as well as backward-looking, how many people came and where did they spend money.
How are you going to measure success? How are you, what are the results you're expecting? How are you going to measure them?
Well, I think I shouldn't say as usual, but in terms of the Canadian question, obviously border crossings that's a real number. It is obviously not all in our control.
Right.
So,
They're not saying staying in Vermont either.
Correct. Right. But it's a proxy, right? So we can be looking at that. Spend is really number one. Like, what does the visitor spend look like in 2025 versus previous years? And we are able to look at that domestically versus internationally. And, again, this sort of, sentiment is not something that we can maybe necessarily affect, but I think we're going to be looking for, what are those visitation numbers? What are those spend numbers? To see if we were able to, I think at this point, holding steady would look like success. So I think it's a little bit of how can we stem the losses as much as possible, just to be frank.
Are you also tracking things like real estate sales? This is totally anecdotal, and I have no data to give you, but I have heard that Canadians own a lot of property in Stowe. They own property up in the islands. And, is that something that you would be tracking or could track? I guess you could through the Realtors Association, right? Track sales and whether it's, a Canadian selling or whatever.
It's not something we've tracked in the past. I have also heard anecdotally of Canadians saying, this is it, I'm selling up.
Right.
I think there would be a couple of dots to connect there in terms of, we might know that a property from somebody with a Canadian address has sold, but I can't necessarily say why or if our efforts would have had any impact on that.
Yeah. Well, the Realtors Association might be a good connection then.
Yeah, we can certainly see in terms of what else
Yeah,
people are hearing in terms.
they would know the details.
But we're looking at events to that point, what are people seeing, foot traffic? I think those are some of the impacts that are going to be harder for us to quantify, but are going to feel very real on, quote unquote, Main Street, which is that, okay, so there's this reduction in, Steve has also shared that, Canadian hockey teams are not taking part in their, weekly tournaments. Golf groups are canceling. When that golf group doesn't come to Jay, they also don't go shopping in Newport, and they also don't, they don't even buy gas on the way here or there and so forth. So I think that level of, reduction in revenues that then are obviously going to turn, have tax.
They're not staying over, they're not buying.
Exactly.
Things, we need a lot of people that stay over. It's a real concern amongst the
Yeah.
inn owners here and people that rent Airbnbs. They're already getting cancellations and things.
Right.
People often
Yeah.
sometimes they make reservations a year in advance to come to.
Yeah.
Some of those folks.
Right, and we'll see it in rooms and meals tax, I would guess, that's, that's some of the things that we have worried about as a legislature is what happens if we have a 30% reduction in Canadian visitors, what does that do to rooms and meals? What does that do to sales tax? I mean, is somebody paying attention to that somehow? And
we will
yeah, some, but
we will certainly look at it, but I think there's the frustration is that there's this delay in knowing, we just don't have that sort of real-time barometer. I mean, we can look at, forward pacing reservation data. So far, it's actually looking flat year over year, which again, I think that's fine. But we also know that just the way travel patterns have changed, the booking window is getting shorter and shorter. So, we're in a bit of a off season now. So it feels like I don't want to make any conclusions as of yet as to what we're seeing. But we're not seeing any positive. We're not seeing any positive metrics. We're just,
yeah, it's like putting your anchor in so that you don't go backwards.
yeah, a bit. Yeah.
Exchange rates, been watching exchange rates. Because historically,
Yeah.
I live right by the border, exchange rates is what really dictates how many people come down. And when it's favorable, they come. When it's not favorable, I've seen it shut off dead.
It's definitely a factor. What we have seen both in the direct outreach that we've gotten and in surveys of Canadian, intent to travel, it's that it's just one of. And so I think that it's compounding factors. The exchange rate doesn't help.
You know what it is now?
Pardon?
You know what it is right now?
Not off the top of my head, but it's like
It was
70 years.
70 cents.
Yeah.
That'd
be my guess.
Great. For Canadians coming in.
But the surveys say that it's not the exchange rate that's stopping people from coming here. It's the federal rhetoric. I would just say, I would be remiss to not say that, we are worried about visitation and to the point about the questions about budget and what our destination marketing dollars can do. And so I know there is a cut on the table for our department, for our grow relocation grants. That was not, we were not asking for additional money. So if that cut goes through, that comes out of our operating budget, and we have a lot to do with our operating budget right now. I just want to call attention to that base cut.
Can you tell me what's going on domestically? I mean, is this grow relocation grant? This is not to attract Canadians, it's to attract people from other places who come to vacation. What's going on with our domestic side, the marketing? Is there any impact with that?
So I'd say to probably two different parts of that question I can answer. So domestically, in terms of leisure travel, what we're seeing is a little bit of a softening, similar, which is basically that folks, all this uncertainty, whether it's tariffs or otherwise, it's just people feel like we are headed into a recession. And so people start to pull back on their discretionary spending. So it's just another pressure that we see. We don't know if that will bear fruit. On the other hand, people, we have such a healthy drive market. When people are pulling back on their budgets, it may mean that they're not going to fly for their vacation and they're going to drive instead. And so that is to our benefits. It's a potential benefit to us there. I would also say that, we've heard from some international travelers that if they do decide to come to the US, they may forego destinations like Florida, Texas, or Las Vegas and choose to come to a more progressive part of the country, which again would be a potential, market opportunity for us. But those are big, high level trends. It's hard for us to see what will come. The GROW grants are about helping folks who would like to move here, and those grants go to 10 different communities around the state. There's a combination of chambers of commerce and RDCs, and it's really when, folks are interested in moving here that they help them to integrate into their communities and make those connections so that they can become new residents.
We have other programs, so we're worried about the risk.
Okay, so.
With that program.
Yeah, so that's our only federal funding. I mean, I think that's enough to be worried about.
To be worried about. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's the promise, quote unquote, of this money was it really has been enabled the department to do so many things that we've always wanted to do in terms of, visitation research and the strategic planning and being able to subgrant to organizations around the state for like projects that they feel will be transformational to their communities, in addition to, the outward marketing. So, any disruption of that not only kind of puts us back in terms of a footing for the future and being able to really show what we can do when we invest in the tourism economy. But it's really, it's even more critical now because of what we're kind of the headwinds we're facing. So.
I'm just thinking about this risk because it's a lot of money and Fish and Wildlife is the other 2 million of
Forest Parks and Rec.
Forest Parks. Okay. I had the wrong one. Okay. How close are you to doling out the money for that 6 million? I mean, if you heard something in the next week, you could probably pull back, but at what point is it really the point of no return?
I mean, we have a little bit of time, but we have contracts for almost.
I get that,
yeah.
and that will obviously change if the feds say they're not going to give you the money.
Right. If
you haven't sent the money out.
Right. So I think we're because of this delay, there are expenses that we have already incurred that we will not, we'll have to unwind what contracts we can, if that's still possible, if the work hasn't been done. We'll have to pull back on our marketing. We'll have to, make some very, very difficult decisions.
I'm formulating a question. What was the total allocation supposed to be? I want to say 10 million.
Yeah, 10.4.
And so you've spent 3 million
Mm-hmm.
and that's been reimbursed.
Correct. Well, yes, sorry.
When did you first get that 10.4? When was when were you awarded?
2022 maybe?
Yeah, there was a delay at the beginning of the award, because first of all, we did a series of outreach to figure out, I mean, this is an amazing amount of money for our departments. We really want to make sure that we put together a plan that made sense. So we took some time to figure out exactly how we would spend that money to make sure that would be to our best, use going forward for the industry. Then we had to get approval from EDA. We got approval from the governor's office. We had to go through the AA1 process, so we didn't get going on this as quickly as we may have liked. The 2023 flooding didn't help, I will admit, because that was another change of our focus. But that said, this is all work that's been in progress. The reason we haven't billed for it yet is just because it is this reimbursement setup.
We've been able to see any results from that first 3 million that has been spent.
I mean, I would say yes, in the fact that it's the strategic planning work and I'm talking about data that we're now getting that we've never had before. That's because we were able to contract to get that information. So we're able to now understand more about the industry and the impact of it, the economic impact study that we were able to create this year, as well as the economic impact of the eclipse. We would never have been able to fund those kind of studies in the past.
Schedule another one of those?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's one on the books, yes. So they're going to do it for 2024. So that's one of the things that hasn't been reimbursed yet. But the data is not all available to do 2024 into this level.
I need
Yeah.
schedule another
Eclipse.
Oh, another eclipse. I wish I could do that. So, I mean, I would maintain that, you know, the 15.8 million people that we welcomed, you know, in the last, you know, our last accounting, that's because of the work that the department does. We couldn't possibly have the kind of reach and the campaigns that we've been doing in the last couple of years if it were not for this EDA money. So we're able to now run, you know, $1 million campaign for summer and fall, where before this money was in our budget, that was more like, you know, 600,000. So it's been a game changer for us. Yes. And it would be great to see some of that going forward, but we'll save that for another day.
We're also, I mean, every other state got this, you know, proportionately.
Yeah, yes and no. So other states also received this money, but the amount of money was proportional to their losses, but it didn't take into account to what their normal budget is. So I'll just, you know, use Maine as an example as our biggest competitor. So, you know, our destination marketing budget is 3.5 million. Theirs is 17. So the fact that they also receive money is to their benefit, but they, you know, the city of Portland also has, you know, a $20 million budget, I think it is. So it's hard to say.
New Hampshire, what do they?
New Hampshire's about $10 million is their budget.
10 million.
So, I mean, for us, what it meant is that we were able to embark on projects that we would never have been able to do before in terms of creating creative assets that we can now use going forward, you know, new videos, photography, you know, the kind of, we're doing content that showcases all of our different regions to invest in specific videos for each region, specific content for each region. That kind of work is the department has never had a budget to be able to do that. That will benefit us going forward. And so in terms of the impacts of what we've seen, you know, I think we'll continue to reap those benefits.
Lynn?
Yeah, can you explain how many gets the 17?
Because they get a portion of the rooms and meals tax. It helps, yes, and they've had it for 20 years and they've been able to build on that. So because they are able to see a portion of, you know, their work, they're able to get a portion of that red tax revenue that comes back, that funds their operation to then bring in more money.
Oh, seed money.
A little bit, yeah. So then, you know, I believe they also get, I'm not sure if it's from the lodging tax or not, but I believe I think it's split in fund and tax stream. But we can talk about funding models for tourism another day if you like.
Right now, we want people to come to Vermont. Yeah, and keep our good relationship as best we can with Canada, who are our friends.
Yes.
Any more questions formulating?
No.
Okay, anybody else? We really appreciate you coming in. As you
Thank you.
see, we are very worried and concerned about, you know, your department, but also our relationship and wanting to
Yeah.
ensure that we, like all of us here, really, that we can maintain that good relationship.
Yes, it is our top priority. Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for all you're doing. We appreciate it. We really appreciate your time coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, here, thanks. Keep us posted. Who has tourism? Let Tom tell us the connection. Is it?
Happy to.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, so committee. That's it for the morning. At 2:00, we have the Agency of Natural Resources. And then at 3:30, we have the Department of Public Safety. So